Welcome to Section 4. Here we're going to be multiplying decimals using various methods. In this video, we'll be using base 10 blocks. So let's review. When you have a block like this that is 10 units across and 10 units down, we call that a flat. That's going to represent one whole. Then this rod will represent 1/10. And then the small cubes represent the hundredths place. So let's start by looking at how we can use these blocks to represent these decimals. So if I have 1 4/10, I would use one of the flats and then 4 of the rods. If I'm trying to represent 2 3/10, I would need 2 of the flats and then 3 of the rods. Now notice the way I have these blocks arranged. I would not put them like this because we're trying to form a rectangle out of the blocks. So I want to either line them up vertically or horizontally. So if you were to squeeze all the blocks together, it forms a nice rectangle. So the shape on the right would not be a rectangle. So now let's use our blocks to help us calculate 2 1/10 multiplied by 2 2/10. So let's start by representing 2.1. So I need 2 of the flats and then 1 of the rods. So that's 2 1/10. Now down the side, I'm going to represent 2 2/10. Now I already have one whole there, so I just need another one, another flat, and then 2 of the tenths. So now to find the product, what we do is we fill in this rectangle here using the largest blocks possible. You don't want to have to fill in all this space using the little tiny cubes when you can use a larger flat. So I see that we can fit a flat here, and to the right of that we can fit a rod. We can put a couple of rods on the bottom, and then we'll use 2 small cubes to complete the rectangle. Now we can count up all the blocks, and that will be our answer. So let's start with the flats. How many holes do we have? We have 4 holes. Now let's count the tenths. We have 6/10, and then we have 2 hundredths. So now we can write our answer as 4.62. Now you'll notice here that I have grid paper as the background. If you don't have the base 10 blocks to actually work with, you could represent them on grid paper. So let's draw 3 3/10. Well, I'd have 3 of the flats and then 3/10. Now let's represent 1 6/10 down the side. Now I already have the one hole there, so I just need to add on 6/10. So here I have represented 3.3 and 1.6. So now to find the product, we need to fill in the empty space to create a rectangle. Now I notice I can't use any flats here. If I try to fit one here, it is actually too big and it wouldn't create a rectangle. I need to use our rods here to fill up this space. And then the space that's left over needs to be filled up with the small cubes. So now we've created a rectangle. Let's see what we have here. We have 3 holes. We have 21 tenths. And then we have 18 hundredths. Now before we write our answer, we need to know that if you have 10 or more tenths blocks, we're going to trade that in for a whole. If I have 10 rods, that is equal to 1 flat. Now likewise, if you have 10 or more hundredths, we're going to trade that in for a tenth because 10 of these small cubes equals 1 rod. So don't forget we had 3 holes, 21 tenths, and 18 hundredths. So let's trade in 20 of the tenths for 2 holes. And when I do that, I now have 5 holes, 1/10, and 18 hundredths. Now when I look at the 18 hundredths, I'm going to take 10 of those and trade that in for a tenth. So when I do that, it means I now have 2 tenths and then 8 hundredths left over. So now I can write my answer 3.3 times 1.6 is 5.28. So now you can move on to the next video to learn another method of multiplying decimals.